I am very glad to be home right now because I've been traveling for the last few weeks, but pretty much incessantly, and I feel like I've been everywhere but in my own home. But part of what that incessant traveling has kind of bred in me is I've learned to travel light. Like a couple of years ago, when my husband and I would go away on vacation, I would pack everything I owned into like a giant suitcase, and then we would check the giant suitcase, and then all of my stuff would be sent into the belly of the plane, and I would just, hope that it was actually on the plane that I was on and would get where I was going. But over the last few years, I've kind of learned to pare down what I'm bringing and travel as light as possible. But I just came back from a trip from Rhode Island to Dubai, which was pretty far from home for me. It's like 6,700 miles. I managed to get there and back with a carry-on, which for me was a huge step forward. But with diabetes, it's a little bit of a challenge. You basically need to pretend that everything that you own diabetes-wise is going to break, and you need to have a backup plan. For me, I've broken things down into 3 different tiers to help me, pack as lightly as I can. And I've broken that down into insulin, testing, and lows. For insulin, it comes down to my trusty pump, and I make sure that I have my trusty pump and all my trusty pump supplies. I've got the tubing and the cartridges and the whole bit. But part of what I've been doing for when I'm traveling out of the country is bringing a backup pump. And it sounds like it's, kind of overzealous to plan on your pump breaking and needing an extra one. But when it does break, you do want to be able to just go right back on the pump and not have to do MDI if that's not what you want to do. Animas has a loaner pump program, which is fantastic. You let them know when you're leaving. They send you a backup pump. You never need it. That's great. You just send it back to them. But in that moment when you do need it, you are covered. And that is awesome. I always make sure I have an insulin pen in addition to having insulin in the bottles to refill the pump. Because sometimes you just need to change your pump on the fly and you can't. You might need a little time. And the insulin pen can help buy you an hour or two if that's what you need to get to a place where you feel comfortable changing your pump. I always make sure that I have a backup vial of insulin in addition to the open bottle that I'm using, in addition to insulin pens, just to make sure that even if I drop that insulin bottle on the floor and it shatters everywhere, I have backup insulin for when I need it. It's like you plan for the worst, you hope for the best, and you live somewhere in between. I bring this meter everywhere I go, and I make sure that I have the meter. I bring a backup meter, like one of those little minis or something. Then I make sure that I have enough test strips to last me 2 weeks past what I'm actually planning on being there for. So if I'm traveling for 5 days, I bring like 4 bottles of strips. I don't know why that I feel the need to be that over-prepared, but if I don't use it, great, it comes home with me. If I need it, awesome, I have it. So we've talked about insulin, and we've talked about testing, and now I bring the glucose tabs. I don't really like the way that glucose tabs taste, but I do like the way that they travel. They're not liquid, they don't melt, they don't freeze, they can survive any condition. I think they might be like the cockroaches of low blood sugar treatment because these things just don't die. When I'm traveling, I usually bring, 3 or 4 bottles with me, 1 in my carry-on, 2 in my luggage, and then if I check luggage, I'll, chuck some in there too. But I make sure that I have these all the time. They're fun to rattle. Traveling anxiety, I can mitigate that by being prepared. So I have extra insulin, extra test strips, glucose tabs in case I go low. I feel like I'm armed with enough stuff to manage pretty much any diabetes emergency that gets thrown my way. Feeling prepared alleviates the anxiety, and for me, that makes traveling so much easier. And that's pretty much it. And coffee. There's also that. It's kind of essential. If they lose my luggage, that's a whole different problem.